Hi, everybody. Welcome back to WorkTech. I'm George LaRocque, and I am really excited to introduce the WorkTech community to ConnectUs, which calls itself the ultimate one-on-one meeting tool for managers. And I'm joined by co-founder and CEO Teo Gonzalez to learn more about ConnectUs. Teo, welcome.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it. I'm pumped to be here.
Yeah, me too. Now, I've known you for a while. I've worked with you through the Impact WorkTech Accelerator, so I know a little bit about ConnectUs. But can you share an intro of yourself and a little bit about ConnectUs and what the ultimate one-on-one meeting tool for managers is?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me and thanks for everything you've been in this journey. I love the Impact WorkTech community. Everyone go check it out. And I think for details in terms of who I am, what I'm up to, what we're doing at ConnectUs, it starts a little bit with my background. So for context, I'm a public health undergraduate education person, but I went into management consulting for a few years at Accenture before going to business school at Dartmouth Tuck. And while I was there at Dartmouth, I was thinking a lot about my career journey, what inspired my best moments, my worst moments. And what was standing out to me is how often people mattered for that experience, especially the managers that I had. My best experiences often hinged on an amazing manager, and my worst experiences often came down to not having that right relationship with a manager. And so while I was in business school, we were thinking a lot about what the future of work was going to look like because it was during the pandemic, and we were seeing incredibly low levels of employee engagement, high levels of burnout, and it was fascinating how when I talked to people, what was driving those two levers for them, they similarly to me expressed it had to do with the people and the way they were being set up at work, which again, the manager was able to facilitate. What were people working on? How strong did they feel like they had support? Well, when you talk to managers, they're balancing so many different things at once. And so my co-founder and I, Christine, she's the better half. She's our technical guru. We decided we wanted to build a tool that gave a manager everything that they needed in order to have really strong understanding for what their people are up to, how they're doing personally, and how they're growing within their organization. So when we call ourselves the ultimate one-on-one meeting tool, we aim to be a one-stop shop for all of the context that you as my manager or any manager might need to be able to know what is going on with their people and how that relationship is going. The details of that could be simple reminders saying, hey, maybe George, it's time for you to check in with Teo. It's been a while. By the way, don't forget that he is a huge fan of soccer. So maybe ask him what he's thinking of the World Cup. And by the way, here are the goals that you set for him in January. And as we close out the year, he's been able to accomplish these 75%. We have some room to grow in the other 25%.
Cool. So how that the journey that you talked about, I know you've been like any good leader, you've been adapting, based on input from your customers. How's that gone? How have things evolved and why have they evolved in whichever way you've been taken?
Yeah, I think the biggest evolution is something we're doing right now is empowering even more the individual contributor side of that manager individual contributor relationship. When we set off to build this, we were thinking, managers are incredibly busy, but we know they have high impact. Let's initially build a feature set for them, and build it with them in mind. And while we felt that was really successful and it's led to a great experience for our managers, what we've also realized is work also depends just as much on how someone's able to feel invested in that relationship. And to only enforce one half of that relationship was a disservice to the organizations we're working with. And so the biggest pivot on our minds right now is how do we give an individual contributor all of those opportunities to influence the relationship in the direction they want. And so it's more than just managing up, even though a lot of individuals sometimes want tips on what are things they should be talking about with their managers, how to do that. It's also about giving that context of, that you want your experience at work to be X, Y, or Z. So let's give you all that same context we give a manager in terms of how you're doing towards your progress. what are the things that you're talking about on a regular basis? What are things you might want to talk about going forward, and give you the opportunity to facilitate those conversation points yourselves. And so that's a lot of our direction going into 2023, giving a lot of that feature set for the masses, not just those who drive the experience for large groups at once.
Yeah. I think that's key. And you said something that was really brilliant there about only delivering on one side of that relationship. It does a disservice to the organization. And a lot of the work that I'm doing is defining like this next wave of work tech. And we're talking about how it's employee first and experience driven, but it's got to be tied to the business, because I've seen a lot of products come into the market that are completely employee first, and they're almost a little fluffy, like they're not tied to metrics or and the business has to pay for it. So you've got to do both sides, right? You've got to be able to talk about, like, Teo loves the World Cup, check in with that, and also how's the project going.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah, because that's why you're both there at the end of the day. So that was, I like that a lot. So how does it work? Like, how does the product, how do people access it, and how does it get used?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll take that example from earlier of you're my manager and I'm your direct report. And so I'll paint the picture for what that relationship looks like today and what it's also going to look like going into 2023 as we expand to the individual contributors. As a starting point, you and I are onboarded onto our platform, which shows you kind of a high level for our organization in terms of what are the broader organization's goals and who else is a part of our team, even if it's in a completely different department. Reason being, what we heard a lot from employees and managers alike, a huge part of their success depended on how well they felt connected to the broader organization's goals and also to a broader team. And so that was why we started there. And then we start peeling back the layers on the onion to get even deeper into each relationship at a micro level. So you've gotten that whole high level organizational perspective. Now you as a manager have your whole team available to you. You have 10 direct reports, and you get insights directly on when was the last time you met with each of them. And whenever you decide you want to zoom in, it starts to appear a little bit like a CRM does. So when you think of HubSpot or Salesforce, and you keep track of all that data related to your clients and that relationship you have with them, we give you that insight for your direct reports. And so you'll get to my page and you will see a profile on me, the way I like feedback, the way I don't like feedback. And this is all driven by insights I've actually shared with you. I've been very active in articulating what are the things that I'm looking for. And you also get access to what we call our notebook set. And so you have a private notebook, which is those kinds of things that maybe you wished you had been able to keep track on a joint Google Doc, but not have me see. Maybe it was like, oh, I want to put this somewhere, but where? So maybe it's in a notebook somewhere, maybe it's in a different Word document. We put that all in one place. And then you also do have that collaborative notebook, which is kind of like what you're used to probably doing within any other software, maybe like Google Docs, where you're leaving comments for the other person to see and me to refer to later. And then finally, you also get access to a timeline. And so in that relationship, you'll see the full history of all the meetings we've had, including what were the agenda topics we discussed, how did we each leave that meeting feeling. So you get to go ahead and indicate, I felt this was a really useful meeting. I get to document for myself how I felt that meeting went. Was it useful or not useful? And we give that higher level analytics to the organization to understand what are the most common things our people are talking about? How can we go ahead and support them? How are people feeling? Maybe at this time of the year, people aren't really that enthusiastic, or maybe they're having too many meetings. We need to go ahead and advise them to reduce or maybe increase, depending on what that looks like. So what we do is we ensure that each of those micro relationships, you with your direct reports, is able to provide a lot of really useful data for the organization as a whole to apply interventions or support mechanisms that ensure broader successes throughout every other department as well.
Yeah. So I know you've got customers using the product now. And like I mentioned, I'm aware that you've been learning a lot from them. What does the ideal customer for ConnectUs look like?
Yeah, so we've been right now working primarily with companies or portions of companies that have between 100 and 1,500 employees in headcount. And so the reason we've been targeting that, and we do that in an industry agnostic fashion, having companies in logistics all the way to healthcare or media. And the reason we look at it from a size perspective is where we can bring the most utility. And so what we've seen is once you start to get to 100 employees, your processes look incredibly different.
Mhm.
And you're starting to think more about institutional structures that you need that can grow with you. The reason we usually aren't working right now with above 1,500 is actually great advice that I think I got from either you or Gareth. When it came to the enterprise clients, we know someday that is where we're going towards to support tens of thousands of employees at a time, but that is a very different requirement set. And we want to make sure that we're able to validate as much components of the experience of an employee, an administrator, a manager within these smaller groups before we start needing to think about the things that come with an enterprise client, like payroll. How does it integrate with a workday? How does it do all these other things that are incredibly important for a structure of that size, but at the same time require so many other things that need to be worked on beyond the immediate value given to a user?
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like advice that either one of us would have given you. So
Yeah, probably both.
yeah, we'll share it. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe different calls, same thought.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you mentioned the types of customers that you've got working on it. What, what are is there a use case or like a
Yeah.
goal that they're trying to achieve, or is there like a commonality between how they're using it or why?
Yeah, there's two main branches of people who use it. First, a lot of our users are using it from a performance management lens because and we've talked about this before, performance management has evolved a ton. It's been a hot topic for a while, right? Like leaving behind the annual performance review in the form of something better. And within our product, when we look at meetings, we do a very distinct differentiation between a general check-in and a performance check-in. And so a lot of our users came to us for performance management, but they love the fact that we were able to marry that with the personal aspects that lead to improved morale and improved retention. So performance management has been a big use case there. And the second one has been meeting management. And so this is for organizations who have never really thought about what is the influence meetings have on their culture, on their day-to-day. And they want to, provide more support for their new managers or for their people who have never really had structure supporting meetings in the first place. And secondly, to be more proactive in understanding the role of meetings and how they set in place new decisions in terms of what they're seeing in a data-driven fashion. So those are the two main lenses. I think going forward, we're probably going to start seeing those merge even more together because, as I mentioned, our product is aimed at trying to consolidate a lot of aspects of a relationship with the performance, with the broader logistical infrastructure of meetings for an organization. But as we bring the individuals even more into that conversation, I think what we're going to start seeing is companies are going to use us from a broader employee engagement and morale perspective as well.
So, what does success look like in that? Now I've got a feel for who's using it, how they're using
Yeah.
it, the size, what does success look like for them?
Yeah, I think there's been three things that when we pilot with a company or go to a whole new company, that have been really important for us to see to make us feel comfortable going for a renewal. First, we wanted to see improved employee engagement through a lens of how often, over time of using our platform, how much more are they interacting with it. So that comes with a little bit of our customer success approach as well, being pretty hands-on. What we've seen is the happiest employees are the ones who are interacting with our platform the most. And so we want to optimize for that even more whenever we bring on a new customer, for sure. Secondly, I think what we're seeing is greater clarity for employees and everyone in the organization. So we ask people, do you know what you're working on, what you're working on? And so with our first sets of customers, we found when we did our control survey a lot more people expressed not necessarily knowing what they were up to and why that was the case. And so we're seeing that increase over time as well. So that clarity is a big one for us. And then finally, it's still something we've been thinking a lot about, but we're looking at it from a different lens. When I first met you, I think we talked a lot about retention. And we still do talk about retention, but what we've learned from our customers is it's not as simple as saying we improve your retention. It's saying we improve your retention of high performers, because they do feel they are a part of an organization that is pretty clear on what they're looking to achieve and how they're going to grow. And they do feel like they have an actual say in what they're doing. That goes towards that engagement piece. They know where to put things. They know why they're putting things in there, and they know they're going to be able to see that growth, not only in the company's bottom line, but at the individual's own bottom line if they're able to commit to it well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm not surprised, just based on how you've evolved, that you've got customers who are contributing to this conversation and helping you improve. And I really like this because it I know you don't position yourself as employee experience,
right,
but really this is a big part of it, right? It crosses over from the general check-in to performance and business goals and facilitating that experience for managers and the team, right? Yeah, it's huge right now. And in this new hybrid environment, no matter what that looks like, right? And it changes every day. It seems like it's on again, off again.
Amen.
This kind of meeting management is key. And you don't know if tomorrow, what percentage of your team is going to be hybrid next week in a lot of cases. So this structure, I think, is good. So what's next? What's next for ConnectUs and the company, the product? What's next for the new year?
Yeah, for the new year, we're really excited about what we'll be launching to empower individuals even more. So that's the most immediate one.
That's
but I
big.
think, yeah, it's gonna be big. We're really excited there. And we are doing, I think, that the typical startup journey where you've realized, okay, like we deliver value from our feature set. Now, how do we make that experience even more delightful, whether it's aesthetically, things like that. So we'll do some housekeeping items for sure. And then I think we really want to take some time as well to ideate with our customers, our pilot groups, on what is that next insight that is going to be really core to their business. And so I mentioned, for example, we started thinking it was retention, and now we've evolved to it's about retention of the right people, because in times where things are crazy, people are seeing words about layoffs, but retention is still just as important, because you don't want to be losing the people, especially when they're seeing all this movement around you in the org. But there's something else too that we're confident is going to be next. But we just want to fully flesh this out, which is it's not only about retention of the high performers, it's also about building a product set that makes, when turnover happens, less costly, because the people who have been left behind, who are still there, have such a strong network that when someone else comes in, you're not having as intensive a process of onboarding them or doing something else. And we don't want to immediately become an onboarding tool, because there's a lot of really great ones out there. But we do want to experiment with this idea that as generations of workers maybe become less likely to stay in the long term with organizations than they already are, what are things that we can do with what we are already doing that really yield high value in terms of the mobility of how those people go in and out of an organization. So we'll see what comes next in terms of feature set there, but that's heavily on our minds.
Yeah. Well, you've got all those connections, right? I know that it's you're another thing you're not saying is ONA, network analysis. But if you've got the broader connections and you can see that we're going to take one out, you get a quick view to who's impacted. And then you're able to, have a more effective check-in with those people.
Totally.
That's
100% accurate. And I think that's especially where we're really blessed. I think the co-founder relationship that Christina and I have, like she's able to look through that data and just make some interesting decisions or observations that really come to light when you have people looking at it from different lenses, and we get to share those with our customers and see like, oh, I really love the way you're able to point out that my finance department has a really strong leadership structure because everyone's super interacting with the tool. Or maybe this other organization feels really lost in the woods, as we can see by how they're feeling from their meetings. So you hit the nail on the head, and we'll be excited to share more on that for sure.
Of course, layoffs or people leaving. People also leave to go to another department or another division, right? So there's a need to understand, okay, what's the impact when, or how do we minimize the impact when that connection is no longer there. But
absolutely.
Teo, I could drill into this for the rest of the day, but I want to respect everybody's time and yours especially. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed it as usual, and thanks for telling your story here at WorkTech.
Of course. Thanks, George, for everything, for all you've done in this journey. We're really grateful to you. You're always a friend of us, and you have a great rest of the day.
You too. Oh, one last thing. Where can people go to learn more?
Yes, absolutely. You can learn more at www.joinconnectus.com. We would love to hang out with you all in the future for sure.
Great. All right. Thanks, Teo, and thanks, everybody.
Thanks, George.